This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Do you hear that whisper? That little voice that tugs at your heart, telling you to start living your best life. If that sounds like you, then now is the time to join Nectar Growth. It's the only place online where you can connect with and learn from great coaches with different areas of expertise. Why live another day not believing that you're enough, not seeing all that is possible for you? Why live another day dimming your own light? Nectar is the perfect place for you to discover the real you and uncover who you're meant to be. Life is a journey that we are not meant to walk alone. Nectar gives you a nurturing and supportive community to walk with you on your journey. Start living your best life and see what is truly possible. Come join us at nectargrowth.com. You know you're worth it. Are you frustrated with the medical system? Have you gotten sick or suffer from chronic pain, being diagnosed with disease, on medication for life? Or have you been told that your lifespan might be limited? Have you blamed yourself, or do you feel like there's no solution for you? Joining me today is Avital Miller, author of Healing Happens and yoga instructor, to share how you can heal beyond anything you thought possible. Welcome to the roller coaster.
Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be here and be part of the wonderful guests that you've been having for your show. And for those of you listening, if it helps you remember my name, Avital, Siri, when I asked Siri to write my name with talk to text, it thinks my name is all be tall. And if you saw me, I'm really short, but that means there's still hope for me, as there's still hope for all of us.
There you go. There you go. I did try practicing it, but I sometimes, if I think too much, that's when I know I'm going to be talking with marbles in my mouth.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's not English. So even when you read it written, it's pronounced differently than we would normally pronounce English words.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Your book, Healings Happen. What was the reason why you wrote this book?
Yeah, my book Healing Happens. A lot of people get curious because I used to be a program manager at Microsoft. And what are you doing involved with healing? It's because I have a personal story of healing from an autoimmune disorder beyond what was expected. And there I was at about age 27. I was a fitness director. I was a yoga and fitness teacher trainer, teaching 25 to 30 yoga and fitness classes all over town. I was known as the Energizer Bunny. Then I went through kind of like that depression or disappointment or shame and embarrassment of needing to take naps all of a sudden on a family vacation and having fatigue, my hair falling out, my muscles turning to fat, wondering if I was becoming weaker than my students, right? And you can imagine, Lucy, if you lost your ability to speak, like, how would I be able to continue to do this podcast that reaches so many people? And I have this work that is meant to impact and uplift other people and keep them healthy. And here I'm having these health issues. But I really, really saw a vision of being able to continue to do that. So as my health was dwindling, and I'm wondering, is this going to keep getting worse till I die? Because nobody's finding any solutions here. I kept my mind on that vision. Like, something is going to happen here. And eventually we figure out that I have an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. And the doctors put me on a high dosage of medicine, and then they sent me out the door saying that's it for life. I'm thinking, okay, is this like an arranged marriage? I'm stuck with this for the rest of my life. Like, I want to do my best with this if that's the case and figure out how to live with it. Because I really believed what the doctors said. And I just started reading online, reading books, going to all different kinds of medical practitioners. And I even studied one on one with what's called an Ayurvedic doctor in India for 2 months. And all of these things really helped balance me. And then there I am, I start to meditate, and all of a sudden I'm feeling worse. And I go to the doctors and they said I'm overdosed in my medication. This was actually a process that continued to repeat as they're dwindling me down on the medication. And this miracle comes out like, wow, they didn't say this was possible. What else could be possible in life? You know, when your ears perk to something or when your eyes perk to something, you start noticing it more and more. Like if you're going to buy a red Ferrari, you see red Ferraris everywhere. And that is what happened. I started running into all these other stories of people told they're going to die in a few months or a few hours, but they turned it around. I'm meeting them years later. They're fully healthy. So I started interviewing all these experts to bring these stories together for my book, Healing Happens, so we can start to see that this isn't just one or two stories, that this happens frequently, and then start to see what are the patterns amongst all of these different stories. They're all different paths of healing, both allopathic and alternative types of medicine. Over 20 diseases are addressed in the book.
And what were some of those key patterns, those things that everybody mentioned in your book that they were doing the same, that they feel contributed to their healings?
Yeah, I mapped out all of these different strategies and found what are some of the ones that are most common. And I called them full-bodied success mastery. And I picked 4 of the top ones that seem to come up the most and have the most impact. The first one is reason to live. And I love giving people some motion with this just to feel the sense of expanse and potential within that statement. And so if you want to play along, then you put your hands on your heart and you reach your hands forward and open as you say reason to live, as if there's this vast, broad space. So I just have my hands on my heart and then I state reason to live as I open my arms, because it doesn't matter if you're wanting to see your kid walk down the aisle, enjoy your grandkids growing up, like turn the next page of the book. My favorite story was somebody who survived a terminal diagnosis because they were so focused on continuing to watch the soap opera series. Like the doctor said, go put all your money into, traveling and enjoying life. And they called up the TV station and they said, how long is this series going to last? And they put all their money into the TV subscription. It doesn't matter what our reason to live is. The key is to really open our eyes to see the vast expanse of potential that is in those reasons to live. And I love one of the stories in my book with Mamie Jean Lamley. She was doing one of her passions on stage, teaching a course, Think Like a Leader, and gets the call from the doctor. She needed to rush there. Like they wanted her to leave in the middle of speaking, but she at least convinced them to let her finish the day. And they said that she had to start undergoing a surgery. And then that one didn't quite get everything. So she had more and more surgeries the whole time she's apart from her family and her kids. And, she already had a miracle because she was told she wouldn't have any kids and she had 3 kids. And now she's thinking, I want to survive for my kids. And how do I keep a great state of mind for them? The doctors are taking care of my body. What do I do for my spirit? This is all motivated by wanting to take care of the kids. She starts doing these mandala colorings. So mandalas are these drawings that are made out of chalk or flower petals in India, and really for spiritual purposes, all these bright colors before spiritual ceremonies. And if we remember drawing as kids, how soothing that is. So even just that alone is very soothing. Her friends all do this with her. All of a sudden one day she says, hey, why don't you write a question you have about your life and then draw the mandala and I'll give you an intuitive reading with the answer. All of a sudden she has this gift. And all she was doing was saying, how do I live strongly and be happy and strong for my kids. And then she gets this gift of an opportunity to help serve other people as well, and creates this goal in life that her family is number one, and number two, to empower 5 million women. I mean, imagine that, to go potentially from cancer could equal death to I can empower that many people.
Yeah, that's quite a story.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's number one. I can tell you, give you a sneak peek of the other ones too.
Definitely.
So number two is don't listen to everything. I like thinking about this one with a little bit of attitude. Like if you have your hand cocked on one hip and then your arm forward, shaking your finger, no, don't listen to everything. We have Maureen Bell, who was given 6 to 8 weeks to live with a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma type of cancer. She believes them, goes home. Her body gets so light that she's like 85 pounds. She can just be carried around. She's bedridden, morphine patches, oxygen tubes, not eating. And she has one more round of chemo left. They're expecting her to die any moment. So her brother does one final visit to say goodbye. At the end of the visit, he asks her, "Why didn't you fight? Why didn't you
Wow.
fight?" She's like, "Oh, I mean, you were a strong single mom who raised me, who does energy healing. Oh, do I have a choice?"
So she just resigned herself to her diagnosis.
Mm-hmm. And literally with that experience of just asking the question, do I have a choice? She starts to sense she's going to heal. And for the first time, doesn't feel pain in her body and is hungry. She has that one more round of chemo, remember? This is the other thing where we don't listen to everything. She intuitively says, "Oh, I don't need this." But something intuitively also says, "Do it." And she finally looks into what's in all of the chemo drugs. The first one is made from vinca strain. That's the vinca plant. Do you know what that is?
No, I'm almost scared to ask.
No, I wouldn't either. It's periwinkle.
Isn't that like highly toxic?
Maybe that's why it's made for chemo.
I'm like, I'm not a flower person, but I'm like, for some reason, that one raises a little red flag.
I don't know it, but I mean, if you imagine chemo is toxic, that's part of its purpose. It has these toxic side effects, right? But she loved the plant. It's a beautiful plant. She planted it everywhere she lived in her adult life. And so she has a different relationship with the chemo drug going in. Because we have this idea in our head about all of the side effects as to what can happen with chemo. And she's like, "Well, I love this. This is my favorite plant that's going in my body. How great is that?" And normally it would take 9 or 10 hours for all the drugs to get into her system. This time it only took 3. Normally her urine would turn blood red. This time it stayed its normal color. She was gaining weight. Her hair was growing back in. The nurses called the doctor and they said, "Did you give her a placebo?" And they said, "No, we wouldn't do that in her case. It was too serious." So even the side effects that could come with disease or with medicine don't necessarily need to be true. There's another story in my book, Sam Shelley's, you can also read that one, where he just changed his ideas to what the effects of the diseases would be in his body, and they started going away. So we don't need to listen to everything.
That's so true because, doctors, while they can tell us what the disease is or what the problem is, when they give an outcome, it's based on previous experiences. It's not carved in stone. They don't know. They have no clue. And, it comes down to our power of choice. What story is it that we want to choose to believe?
Yes. And are we focusing on our reason to live? There was a nurse who used to tell her cancer patients that the chemo had a 8 or 9% effectiveness rate. When she learned that what they believe will be affected has a higher effectiveness rate, instead, she just inspired people to believe that the chemo would help them, and the success rates went up. I would prefer that doctors explain what they've seen in the past so they can be honest and people can know the risks that they're taking, but talk about it in terms of the past. Instead of saying you have 6 to 8 weeks to live, say in this type of situation we normally see, people have 6 to 8 weeks to live. This is what we've seen help prolong their lives.
And that's it, is that, it's what we choose to believe. But if we have a doctor telling us you have 6 to 8 weeks left to live, then that's the story that you're likely going to choose to believe. And I say choose because you can choose something different.
Yes.
But a lot of the time when a doctor is telling you something, you don't think to question.
Mhm.
You don't think to question. And, I've had similar episodes in my life. But the one that comes to mind the strongest is our son. Our youngest. He's now 19, was diagnosed with an extreme case of dyslexia, to the point where they said, we don't know if he'll be able to live alone. We don't know if he'll be able to read. The school said, we don't know if we can teach him.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, don't worry, he's going to be fine. We'll figure this out. And the school, they kept forcing him into reading classes and I want to say calling out the problem as opposed to just letting him be. And I used to have a lot of arguments with the school because I'm like, no, he's not doing this reading homework. He's just going to be a kid. Let him be a kid.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he taught himself how to read somehow. Somehow taught himself how to read, graduated from high school on time. He's finished his first year of college. He's on the dean's list. Don't tell me that my kid is not going to be able to live on his own or, graduate or any of these things. He did. He just needed the space to be himself and to not be weighed down by those negative outcomes that are put upon people.
Yeah. Little secret. My mother had me undergo a lot of tests before first grade. She thought I would need to repeat kindergarten because I wasn't putting letters together, probably as well as my older brother and sister, who are very intellectually smart, both of them. And through the testing, they decided she's fine. I'm hearing them have all these discussions. They said she's fine. And they just had me have a tutor. And I just worked hard. I would get 55% in the equivalency exams in grammar. I got 99% in math consistently. By the time I did my SATs, my math stayed the same. The grammar one, it got up to 85%. And you know what? And of course, I graduated from college with honors, but my book hit bestseller on Amazon, sold over 900 copies in the first year, which I've heard is really good for a new author, and won 4 awards.
Wow.
4 awards.
Yeah.
For someone who couldn't write.
Yeah. And I mean, how many times have you seen people that have dyslexia or have learning challenges completely overcome and blow everything out of the water? Yeah. And the truth is doctors can give us their best guess. I'm not blaming doctors. I mean, certainly our healthcare system in Canada is in disarray, and doctors barely have any time to, deal with the smallest of issues. So it's not doctors' fault. but I think in general, we've been taught to set aside the power that our body has to heal itself in exchange for a diagnosis from a doctor and a prescription.
And we've been taught not to listen to our body, not to have that relationship, to learn to understand better what it is telling you to need. And we need all these tests to tell us what's going on with our own body. There's a lot more that we can learn to tune into ourselves. And I love relating this concept of don't listen to everything more broadly. Oprah Winfrey, Steven Spielberg, Albert Einstein, Michael Jordan, Lady Gaga. They were all told at one point they didn't have what it takes. They didn't listen. Look at what they've done now and the impact on the world.
And that's it. It's who says that they didn't have what it takes. Mm-hmm. And that's it. It goes back to, don't listen to everything. Well, everybody has an opinion. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any of them right. Yeah. It's an opinion.
Yeah.
So it's up to us as individuals to choose what information we're going to listen to and what we're not. And I think something as simple, and people laugh at me, but something as simple as I don't listen to the news. I used to watch, the 6:00 news every night, used to do that, but it's depressing. It's full of doom and gloom, and constantly putting that into your head.
Purpose behind it.
I know. but constantly
the purpose behind it.
And constantly putting it into your head is not good. Mm-hmm. It's not good. I mean, I've seen people that listen to the news too much, and the level of fear and anxiety and stress is through the roof because of the messages that they're allowing into their own minds.
It's funny because since I was a kid, I don't watch news on my own. In my home in childhood, the news was on at times, but in public, when you're at, I don't know, waiting in the dock or whatever it might be, the news is on. And it's really funny because I don't normally hear it. I'll read the information that I need online, but I don't normally hear, quite how things are communicated and the tone of voice. And every now and then when I hear it, I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder everyone's scared in the world. Or it's being presented.
Well, and it's like in Canada, we don't have advertising on drugs, medication. Like you'll have an ad for over-the-counter, like cough, cold, headache, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But there's no advertising on drugs. Mm-hmm. So when we watch a US TV station and they have the ad for some wonder drug that's going to cure like toenail fungus or something,
you see all the lines at the bottom of all the side effects.
I'm like, well, first of all, I didn't realize it was that big of a problem that I was going to need to have a prescription. But then you see this laundry list of problems and you're like, why in the hell do I want to put that in my body? Like, it's like, if all that can go wrong because I got an ugly looking toenail, well, let's just maybe find a reason to just deal with the toenail instead of putting all of that in me.
It makes sense if you have something life-threatening and the side effects don't seem as bad as dying.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sense in every situation.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, so we hit on number 2. Don't listen to everything. What's number 3?
Number 3. Do what you can do. And I love this. We actually circle our hands around in front of our heart. It's an energy healing too. So you're moving the energy in front of your heart. You kind of shake your head. Yes. But this is key to understand each of the words in do what you can do. And a lot of this is really about being you and understanding that when you do things in the area that you really can accomplish, it's going to impact the other areas of your life. And one of my chapters, I think I called it, was it love or was it kale? And this is Dr. Brooke Goldner. So she was already a doctor and she had lupus from teenage years. They figured this out. She was lucky enough to be healthy enough to go through getting her medical degree. But she knows from the medical research that you can't heal lupus. There's nothing out there for it. But she, at the same time, falls in love quickly with this gentleman who asks her to marry him after 1 month. And they hadn't even gotten to like past like, what's your favorite movie and TV show? So she didn't even tell him she had lupus.
wow.
So she had to tell him. She said, my body's going to deteriorate. I can't have kids. You're going to have to take care of me as I get older. And he sits back for just a moment. And then he says, a short life with you is better than none at all.
Aw.
I know. So it sometimes makes me want to cry. I have to like hold back the tears when I tell the story, because here's this person who thought she'd never get married. She's getting married. She says, okay, well, I want to look great if I'm getting married. If we remember MTV, okay, was it VH1? I actually, so my dad lives in Toronto, and over the winter holidays, I used to get sick over New Year's, and I'd sit at home while everyone else went out, and I just watched like VH1, right? The music videos. Yeah.
I was like MTV. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, the Canadian version of MTV. And he used to train the dancers or the models, to quickly get weight off from their partying pooches before the next video shoot. So he's like, okay, I'll just put you on my diet. She's okay, but I'm not going to eat meat. It ends up being a vegan diet, which he hadn't been fully vegan before. The wedding was a few months later. She did her routine test beforehand. No lupus. That's probably about 15 years ago. Still no lupus.
Yeah.
What did she do? Vanity. She went on a diet so she could look good for her wedding.
But it was, she found, obviously the diet that she was having wasn't compatible with her body makeup. And she just happened to stumble upon what she needed to do to resolve that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, regardless of how she got there, that's still an incredible breakthrough for her.
Yep. Yep.
Because she would have sat there and just, succumbed to what the doctor was telling her was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she realized that they studied very little nutrition to get the medical degree. And she started this whole smoothie revolution. And she's helped a lot of other people overcome autoimmune disorders and other challenges with this diet.
But don't a lot of the autoimmune disorders, aren't they typically traced back to something that we're putting in our bodies?
Oh, okay. You want me to explain autoimmune disorders? So I can't speak for all autoimmune disorders, but the general theory, right, that doctors would say is that it's the body attacking itself. I have a couple challenges with that. And one, just spiritually speaking, I don't believe that the body would ever attack itself. I don't believe the body ever gets confused. I actually believe that the body is always trying to heal itself. So there's a few different types of medical practitioners that I've heard different pieces of this from. But just a couple of the ones to say on the forefront that are easier to perceive is that there is a virus in your body that the body is attacking. So Epstein-Barr virus and Lyme disease have often been associated with thyroid issues. And so you could treat the thyroid issue with medication, or you could look into how to treat Epstein-Barr or Lyme and get tested for those too. So the body's attacking like a virus in your thyroid gland, not the thyroid gland itself.
Okay, so you caught my attention there because I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism in my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's funny, I think back now, and it was like, the doctor's like, yeah, I mean, she said to me, she goes, it's no big deal. She says, you just have to take this pill every day. And she goes, yeah, it's no big deal. You'll be fine. I'm like, okay, that's kind of how I treated it. But here I am 25 years later, and I'm still taking that one pill every day. Yeah. And, could it be linked to something else? I don't know. Something I'll have to explore. But I fell for it too. I just assumed, oh, my thyroid doesn't produce enough hormone. So I just have to prop it up. But I've also seen that.
Did the doctors tell you for what reason?
For what reason? What?
For what reason is the thyroid not producing enough hormone?
Nope. They just said for whatever reason it is. They said
Mhm.
it's, one doctor told me it's not hereditary. One doctor told me it is, even though there's
Mhm.
nobody else in the family that really has it.
Mhm.
Especially, some people have had it, in their 70s or 80s, but not
Yeah.
early 20s.
Yeah. Well, there is more research that needs to be done on autoimmune disorders through the scientific methods that a lot of people relate to. So the medical practitioners that I've heard of, they know this through working with their clients. And some of them have worked with thousands of people. So that's kind of where they're getting this information. And I will say something too about heredity. See, that this is where it's just there's so much more to understand.
Yeah.
Bruce Lipton, like biology of belief.
Love them.
So the same kid who's born from a family that has the cancer gene and then adopted by cancer without it, then doesn't have the gene, and vice versa. There's also an environmental impact on ourselves, which means so important for our healing. Do what you can do. Make a positive environment around you. Make sure that people are supportive. Where there's stress, figure out how to overcome it or get rid of it. A lot of times stress is just our relationship with something. I just watched a documentary a couple of nights ago on disease being rooted from trauma. So we often know disease comes from stress. Okay, so where does stress come from? Different forms of trauma. So it's that trauma. Oh, it was Betrayal was in one of your podcast episodes too. So
Yeah.
betrayal is
Betrayal.
another form of trauma.
There's so many things that can be categorized as trauma, but we tend to brush off these things that happen to us as that's no big deal, or you push it aside, you bury it in your subconscious.
Mhm.
And although it's not active in your mind, it's not at the forefront of what you're doing, just
Mhm.
because you buried it in your mind doesn't mean it's not buried somewhere else in your body and it's not manifesting its symptoms somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest, we've actually experienced so much trauma. It's actually helpful that some of it is buried until we're ready to address it, because it's actually too much to address all at once. And if you believe in the idea of reincarnation, then you would be holding lifetimes, not just your own lifetime of trauma, but imagine how much trauma you've had in this lifetime, right? Reincarnation is true. Lifetimes of it, which is why we don't remember all these past lifetimes, because it's overwhelming.
It's carried somewhere, even, and it's amazing we get out of bed every day, because even if you look at, you've got your past life trauma, but you also have your ancestral trauma, that those sort of negative thoughts that are passed down. It's just, you're raised based on your parents' beliefs.
Mhm.
So if your parents are carrying limiting beliefs, then they're just, through no fault of their own, they're just naturally passed to you because that's how they see the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way that the brain operates is it doesn't discern between what's yours and what's not when it hears something.
Right.
So it's really easy for your brain to be brainwashed by what you heard a lot growing up.
Yeah.
Really, really easy. We have to do a lot of counteracting.
You can do a lot of inner work sometimes to get rid of some of the garbage that's buried in there.
Yeah.
So number 3 was do what you can do.
Do what
What's
you can do.
what's your last one? What's number 4?
Okay, number 4. We normally sing this. I'm not going to sing for you today because I lost my voice on a roller coaster. Speaking of roller coaster podcast.
Love it.
But I would encourage you to raise your arms above you and look to the heavens. And you ask the question, what is the gift? What is the gift? Having disease is awful. We don't want to undermine that. We don't want to blame ourselves. Often, people have gotten better from getting out of a terrible relationship, from changing jobs, from moving to new cities. All of these practitioners who I mentioned gained a gift of a tool to support other people with. So all of them have been sharing what helped them. They did more research on it in order to be able to share it. So there can be a lot of gifts that come out of this situation. And again, it's not to ignore, undermine the pain and the challenges, but what makes you feel better? Sitting in the emergency room, feeling how horrible you are, wondering how long it's going to be till you're seen, what is wrong, if you're going to get better, feeling everyone else feeling that, or sitting there wondering, what is the gift behind this happening? What could this potentially change for the better in my life and the lives of those around me?
That's definitely choosing a different way to look at the situation.
Goes back to choice.
Goes back to choice. It always goes back to choice.
Yeah.
But again, that's what we forget. We forget that we have a choice on how we look at things. And we have a choice whether we're going to position ourselves in our lives as being the victim or being the victor.
Yes.
As we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners?
What I would say, I think I want to say a couple things. One is just to remind people again to think about the reason to live and to understand that it may not fit into the normal package that we're used to, but it is totally fine and acceptable. So allow yourself to trust your inclination and go after it, because that is what's going to give you the livelihood and the health, and joy, the happiness, and the energy. And what I would also say, because there's so much going on in the world right now and many opinions, and everyone is allowed to have their opinion. I truly believe that. And there's a purpose behind it. There's a match for each of us. And actually, I am a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner. In NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, we say that there's a positive intention behind everything. So there's a positive intention behind everyone's beliefs. And sometimes it's easier if we focus more on people's desire and their intention behind it than on the specific belief itself, so that we can see where the bridges are where we do meet. But on top of that, just take a moment to breathe and be centered in yourself and be confident of what you sense inside of you.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would love to offer everyone a gift, if that's okay.
Oh, beautiful. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Because I mentioned that I was called the Energizer Bunny. I am called an Energizer Bunny again, but I went through that period of fatigue. And what did I do to shift my energy? What did I learn in that process? And what I love doing is finding tools where when I do them, my energy instantaneously shifts. And they're natural resources that I can use at any time. So no matter where I am, no matter what is going on, if I need to feel energetic, it's accessible. So I created a webinar called Energize Your Life: 3 Keys to Unlock Unlimited Energy. I would love to invite your guests to join the next webinar for free. You simply go to unlockunlimitedenergy.com in order to join.
Perfect. And Avital, how can people connect with you besides your webinar?
Yeah. So my name, avitalmiller.com. Avital is spelled A, V for victory, I, T for talented, A-L. Email is info@avitalmiller.com. And also you can find me by my name on Facebook and then get some inspiration. If you want to go directly to my book, just go to healinghappensbook.com. healinghappensbook.com.
Perfect. If you're looking to connect with Avital, make sure you check out the show notes. I am going to have all of the links in there. And Avital, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like